What's up, y'all? Appreciate you taking the time to join in. Hope you're having a nice day. We're going to be talking today about the day of the Lord that comes like a thief in the night, the day of the Lord that is accompanied with loud sounds, and the day of the Lord that is accompanied with the parousia with Jesus Christ. And we read about that in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 5, and also 2 Peter chapter 3, where Paul is teaching the same thing as Peter. It says this: if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, right? He went to Hades. He literally entered into Hades. He literally exited Hades. Even so, them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. And so this says that at the coming of Christ, there are other individuals who are going to leave Hades. Jesus left Hades, but at Jesus' coming, God will bring with him. But it doesn't say they're actually coming from the same location. We're going to see that. They don't come from the same location. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. And so if you look up this Greek word here where it says coming, it says 3952, that's parousia, reference to the bodily presence of Jesus Christ. And so it says this: we which are alive and remain. Well, Jesus taught in the Olivet Discourse, Jesus said that the second coming could happen in that generation. Once everything else was fulfilled, the second coming could have happened in that generation, which is why they were expecting the possibility of it. We which are alive and remain. But then you get to 2 Timothy chapter 4, and Paul says, my departure is at hand. And he says, nevertheless, there is a crown of righteousness laid up for me. So Paul expected a possibility of Jesus coming in his lifetime while he's still alive. He said, we which are alive. He thought that he could have been alive when Jesus came. But then he says, you know what? Probably not. Because 2 Timothy chapter 4, he says, I'm probably going to die first. And then he says this: unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout. That is Jesus' second coming. His first descent down was when he was born of a virgin. This is his second coming down. This is Hebrews 9:28. With a shout. That's not silent. That's not secret. Where individuals say this is the rapture, that's secret and silent. With the voice of the archangel. Well, what does that mean? That's something loud. That's a loud event. With the trumpet of God, the trump of God. That's loud. This is a loud event. All this is saying is this a loud event. This is a very loud event. It's not secret. It's not silent. It's very loud. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. So here's the resurrection out of Hades. These individuals to die, they literally went to Hades. They literally entered into Hades. And here's their literal exit from Hades, but in a new body. Then we which are alive and remain, right? Those of us who are alive, who didn't die, those of us who didn't die shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So you have this one event where the dead are being reunited with the living, and both for the first time are meeting the Lord. And it says it's going to be in the air. And if you look up this phrase, in the air, look up the Greek term, it can reference the atmosphere. So shall we ever be with the Lord. And so it says here, these individuals are in the realm of the dead. They are waiting to be with the Lord. And then the living are waiting to be with the Lord. And both are going to meet the Lord at the same time. The dead in Christ shall rise first. Acts chapter 2 says David was both dead and buried. And it says David is not ascended up in the heavens. The dead in Christ are not with Christ until this event takes place. So notice what this event says. It calls this event the parousia of Jesus Christ. The parousia of Jesus Christ is associated with very loud noises, a shout, the voice of an archangel, the trumpet of God. You go into the next chapter and guess what it talks about? He says this: you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. He's saying, you know that you don't know when it's going to happen. You know that it could happen in your generation, but it might not. He says, you know not even to ask when it's going to happen, because no one knows. It could happen in our lifetime, any week, or it could happen beyond our lifetime. But look what it says. This day is associated with destruction upon the wicked. This day is associated with the day of the Lord. That is like a surprise. Well, guess what happens when we get to 2 Peter chapter 3? 2 Peter chapter 3, he says this: where is the promise of his coming? If we go back to the Greek, it is G3952, parousia. It's a reference to the presence of Jesus Christ. Where's the promise of his presence? But guess what? His presence is associated with. Look what it's associated with. The heavens and the earth, which are now, right, the ones that we're living under, the heavens which we're living under, the earth we're living on, by the same word, are kept reserved unto fire against the dead judgment and perdition of ungodly men. What does that show? What does that show? Isn't that 1 Thessalonians 5 where it talks about the judgment coming upon the wicked? But it says here, this is a reference to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, the destruction which he mentioned, the destruction which individuals would not escape. And notice what it says here. Look what it calls it. It says the day of the Lord. This is 1 Thessalonians 5 will come as a thief in the night. Well, that's 1 Thessalonians 5. You yourselves know that the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. The day of the Lord like a thief in the night. This is 1 Thessalonians 5. Look what it says here. Which the heaven shall pass away with a great noise. What is that? That's 1 Thessalonians 4. That's the loud noises associated with that single event. So you have all of these characteristics. You have the parousia, the presence of Jesus. You have the day of the Lord. And not only that, the day of the Lord like a thief in the night. And then you have these loud noises. 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, Paul is describing the same exact thing as Peter in 2 Peter chapter 3. If you didn't know that, now you know it now. If anybody's trying to tell you in this whole premillennial concept, 1 Thessalonians 4, they say begins the 1,000 years. 2 Peter chapter 3 ends the 1,000 years. Well, it says this, the day of the Lord. How long is a day? How long is the day of the Lord? I had an individual say this last time. I said, how long is the day of the Lord? He said, well, I would imagine a single day. I said, well, this day in 2 Peter 3 is the same day in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And then he hung up the phone call. But you have here 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, the day of the Lord. 2 Peter chapter 3, the day of the Lord. You have 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, the parousia of Jesus Christ. 2 Peter chapter 3, the parousia of Jesus Christ. I mean, both associated with loud noises, the day of the Lord like a thief in the night. And so Paul taught the same thing as Peter. They're not teaching two different things about the end of the world. They are in harmony teaching the same things about the end of the world because both received revelation from the same Spirit, from the Spirit of God who delivered truth to the apostles. And both being apostles, Peter and Paul, they're teaching the same thing. Not that difficult. Share this with your friend in order that they might know the truth. May God bless you as you continue searching his word for truth.